Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast, now in our fifth season looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club from the 99-2000 season. I'm Richard Woodward and this is our look back on the two playoff semi-final games against Bolton, and joining me to discuss them, ITFC Academy expert Joe Fairs and Boomenial, we going with that? Millennial critic, outspoken member of the pod team, Mikey Penty Smith. Gentlemen, how are you doing? I didn't even practice it, Mikey. Boomenial?
Yeah, that's the term that Benjamin Boomer has given me recently.
We've merged Boomer and Millennial. How you doing, Mikey? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I can't complain.
And Joe, how's hashtag lockdown treating you? The Clippers have come out. Is this a cry for help, or is this just a necessity now?
I needed a haircut for about the last 3 weeks before lockdown, and then I just gave up. So I just got Emma to shave it, and
yes.
It's like I say, lockdown. I see all these stories about all these people catching up on series and books and doing things where I'm just chasing two kids around the house all day. So
we're grateful that
bring back work.
Yeah, we're grateful that you've got down off the slide, Joe, and can give some time to talk about the playoff games. We've got I think the plan is. Dave and Ben did a great job of taking us all the way through the 99-2000 season. The 20th anniversary, by the way. We're not just scrabbling around for content, or are we scrabbling around for content? Maybe a little bit of both, as Dave likes to say.
Bit of both.
So let's rewind the clock 20 years, Joe. How old are you, and where can we find you? Back in the May of 2000.
Well, the Walsall game was my 15th birthday, so I was going down there in great hope that we'd get promoted on my birthday, and for a while it looked like we did once Ashley Ward had put Blackburn ahead. And I remember the atmosphere that day went from sort of the absolute highs to sort of one of the flattest atmospheres you can imagine at Portman Road once we knew we were going back in the playoffs, and it was just that, I don't know, just the panic that we're going to lose again for the fourth year in a row. When you see the run that Bolton were on, and then, like I say, we went away there, and when we're 2-0 down, spoiler alert, that's how it went. That you just thought, this is happening again.
Yeah, fourth season in a row in the playoffs. Mikey, were you born yet? That's a compliment. That's a compliment.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. I would have been in year 4. I was 8 years old when the playoffs started, and I turned 9 the day before the playoff final. I would have been getting myself ready for all the summer's football tournaments for Woodbridge Youths. They were great days.
Oh, what position? Still a fullback back then, or?
Yeah, quite tragically, yeah. I was a fullback then, and I'm still a fullback now.
As Jamie Carragher says, no one grows up wanting to be Gary Neville.
No.
Far from Mikey Penty Smith. Good. Well,
I grew up wanting to be Mauricio Taricco. So
that is, fine.
And Herman Hreiderson.
Or Gary Croft, yeah. Apart from that.
or Gary Croft, of course.
I'm a year older than Joe. I know you can't tell by looking at us, but with my isolation beard
that paper round in Baghdad was pretty tough on you.
Yeah, living in the Midlands for over a decade does it to you. I'm revising for my GCSEs as this goes on, Sunday 14th of May, gents. We are. I was watching this on the telly at mate's house. I assume you guys are in similar situations, or did either of you go? I'm looking to Joe. Did you go to this one?
No. I was watching this on the telly at my house with a mate's round.
It's about 4,000 Ipswich fans there on that day. I think it was quite a big away following, as you'd expect. Pieces of context for you guys. I've mentioned it already. Fourth season in a row where Ipswich have finished in the playoffs. Second season in a row where Bolton have been the opponent. But Bolton only scraped into the playoffs on the last day. Huddersfield, who we mentioned in the 99-2000 shows with Ben and Dave, had been on a shocking run since they sold Marcus Stewart, and they lost 3-0 on the last day to Fulham, and Bolton beat Norwich 1-0 to get 6th spot. So they only snuck it on the last day. We've got Sam Allardyce in the home dugout with a little bit of a rat boy tash, I want to call it. I was going to call it something else there. But that season, Bolton got into two cup semi-finals as well. They lost in the FA Cup semi-final. They lost to Tranmere in the Worthington Cup. That was the year Leicester won it. So Bolton certainly, on, as Joe mentioned, on a good run. Ipswich ended up third, 2 points off second, 11 points off Bolton in sixth. It was 10 points the season before, but no away goals this year. And actually, interesting, it might have been helpful this time around. But anyway, let me give you the teams, and you can kind of give me your sense on these lineups. I'll start with Bolton because I think there's some big names here, guys, particularly up front.
A real Nordic flavour.
There's always team, wasn't there? Yeah. Jaskelainen in goal. I think it's a 4-4-2 at this point. It changes for the second leg due to injury. Gudny Bergson, Mark Fish, Paul Ritchie and Mike Whitlow is quite a snarling back four. Michael Johansson, kind of a nippy winger. Klaus Jensen, central midfielder, with I think Paul Warhurst and Alan Johnston on loan from Sunderland out on wide positions, and Dean Holdsworth, nemesis Dean Holdsworth, but Idager Johnson up front for Bolton.
What a player.
That's quite a team, isn't it, guys, there? Quite a lot of pedigree.
Yeah.
Some real players.
And unusually for a team that had made it to the latter stages of cup competitions, they'd actually ended the season. That was their best run of the season. They only lost one of the last 13 and they won 9 of them. And Idager Johnson was in good goal scoring form as well. And obviously we'd lost against them the year before where they weren't in such good form. So I don't know about you guys, but I was thinking, here we go again.
It's quite a physical team, Joe, as well. I mean, we're going to talk about Mike Whitlow quite a lot, but Fish is a tall, dominating opponent. Paul Warhurst is a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Is schooled in the dark arts. Donkey.
Warhorse.
Warhurst, yeah. That's so
and they've also got a new manager this year, haven't they? Because it was Colin Todd the year before, and Allardyce had come in, I think, sort of in the October.
Yeah, he did.
Sort of really turned their season around. So
a team not afraid to mix it up, again, if I'm going to use the cliches.
But with good footballers in there as well.
Yeah.
Klaus Jensen, Johnson, Johansson.
Yep. Yeah, those are different people, by the way. Yeah, and the keeper's decent as well. Yeah, so the Ipswich team is a 3-5-2 for Ipswich, or a 3-4-1-2. Right in goal. Thetty comes back in as centre back, perhaps as a response to Bolton's striker line. Mowbray and Venus, the other defenders, making it the back three. Clapham and Vilnius either side of them, with Magilton and Holland as always in central midfield. Skokov's in the team. I think he's just withdrawn between the strikers in the midfield, and it's Johnson and Stewart. Marcus Stewart, having resurfaced for the Walsall game, starts for this one. On the bench, nothing of note apart from Martin Reusser. And Gary Croft is on the bench as well, Mikey. More of the bench in a second as well. Let's get into it, guys. Feel free to stop me as we go as well, because there is plenty of incident in this one. Ipswich need to take the lead in this as well. As Johnson is in straight away, and Jaskelainen makes the save, and Stewart has a bit of a shank, missing the loose ball on the edge of the box. But 5 minutes, guys, and as Joe said, the worst is going to happen here. It's a set piece, simple set piece. Klaus Jensen it is who swings it in, and Holdsworth gets up above a crowd of defenders, and it's 1-0. And guys, you're feeling same old. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
there's no time at all, is it?
So early, isn't it? And I haven't watched the goals back in great detail. I've seen ours back hundreds of times, but you watch it back yesterday, and Wilness on the post is just asleep, really, isn't he? He's sort of
does go that, right in post.
He's hugging the post, and the ball's sort of coming in from the other side. He doesn't react and sort of face up to where the ball comes from. So it just maybe that was part of the reason why he didn't play the second leg or the final after this.
Yeah.
I just noticed that. But yeah, that sinking feeling when that went in, and sort of you knew that they were strong at set pieces. Holdsworth had scored against us earlier in the season, and he'd score against us again. He's
becoming a bit of a nemesis, isn't he, Mikey? What was your... I'm going to ask this as we go along, but let's have it now. I hated Holdsworth. I couldn't appreciate how good he was, because you watch these highlights back, and Ben's mentioned it as well. Excellent player at this level. Dropped down to
class. Yeah.
But he was a real arse, wasn't he? I hated him.
Yeah, well, I didn't hate him yet. That was to come a little bit later. Obviously, he scored in the game at the Reebok earlier on in the season, hadn't he? And yeah, it was a really good bit of movement, because he gets above Mowbray, which is no mean feat. And I think Mowbray, that's when he took a bang.
No, it's a little bit after. Head. So So I do think there's a little bit of a clash there, but a few minutes later, there's a long ball forward just outside the Ipswich area. Holdsworth sticks his arm up to try and win the ball and sticks a hand into the face of Mowbray, and that's how he gets the black eye. He gets and I think he means it. And Tony Jones, the commentator, is also pretty adamant that he thinks it's deliberate as well. It's a, he doesn't need to stick his arm out as far as he does, but maybe he knows what he's doing. Maybe he's not. He looks very kind of innocent. But he gets
I don't think he played for Wimbledon for all those years without picking up some of the dark arts.
Exactly right. And you're right, Mikey. It's enough to daze Mowbray, certainly, and he stays on for a bit. And 26th minute, guys, it's Alan Johnston down the left-hand side who kind of jinks his way into the penalty area, cuts the ball back to the edge of the area. And Johnson does great here. I mean, he's patient, plays brilliant. The defenders who are all at sixes and sevens, really. And suddenly he finds himself with a corridor to Richard Wright's goal and threads a low shot, firm shot, straight into the bottom corner. But Mowbray is the marker. Mowbray is the man who is caught off guard by the drop of the shoulder here.
And Thetis as well.
And
two of them got sent for a hot dog,
like
as the kids say.
And
a real ankle breaker from Good Johnson, a class finish. I mean, we bang on about how good our goals were in that game, but that strike from Good Johnson was absolutely brilliant as well.
And Mogger is subbed after that almost straight away. And 2-0, Joe. It's from bad to worse. We're not even halfway through. 26th minute, and it feels like game over already, doesn't it?
I can't remember when it happened, but I remember like Manuel Fetis almost getting caught out in his own 6-yard box as well, and hammering a clearance into someone, and you're thinking Mowbray's out. Again. Fetis is on. Like I say, I watched the highlights of the whole season back yesterday, and it's like there's so many penalties he gives away and own goals, and it's just like he was just an absolute donkey, wasn't he, for a lot of it. Like, he obviously had his sites, and I was listening back to sort of one of the David Johnson podcast, and they just said he just didn't speak English, so he just couldn't communicate with anyone, and it was just, like I say, him at the back once Mowbray went off 2-0 down, and that was just like, oh god, we are out of this.
It did feel like a sucker punch to the chest straight away, and it's Wayne Brown that comes on for Mogger, and not too long after that, David Johnson is going to go off injured as well. It's kind of one of these 50-50s where it looks like there's a little bit of need or a little bit of afters in there. It's Mark Fish who's jumping for the ball with Johnson.
Future cult hero.
Yeah, him of the 45-minute single appearance for Ipswich, but I think there's a foul going for the ball. They're both jumping for a ball in the Bolton penalty area, but Fish not only fouls him in the air, I think, also lands on him as well. And
he goes right over the top of him, doesn't he, and lands right on his back. And it
looks like a neck injury or a collarbone injury. He goes on for a bit longer, Jono, but Roycer has to come on and substitute for him. And I mean, this is two key players. We talked about Johnson's goals on this on the pod a lot, but that was a real, as I said, it's a gut punch, not a sucker punch, really, isn't it? Two of your best players, Mogger marshalling a defence that's got errors in it with Thetty, as Joe has mentioned, and now Stewart is out of form at this point. Let's not forget, it's not looking good for us, is it?
And they keep showing the bench, and it's Burley sort of standing there looking almost shell-shocked, and you see sort of David Johnson and Tony Mowbray sitting on the bench behind him, and I just remember the cameras keep going across to that bench and thinking, God...
Not again. Yeah. But
Mowbray looks like a boxer he's had the towel thrown in, doesn't he? He's in absolute bits on that bench.
Dazed and confused. And this is the moment, guys, where this is the first time I can recall jumping up and down like a crazy person watching football on the TV. I'll give you the commentary by Tony Jones because it's quite important. Richard Wright punts a long ball up the pitch, and Tony Jones goes, and to compound it all, Marcus Stewart is now limping. But a few seconds later, this is one of my favourite Ipswich Town goals. I'm not going to say it's the favourite, but what about this? Matt Holland, little jinking, little knock up, tee up, and does Stewart point for this, guys? I think he points where he wants the ball, and Matt Holland puts it there. And what about the goal? Someone needs to describe the goal. I'm going to give the honour to Joe.
I had a brilliant angle on this in that I basically ruined the goal for myself, but totally ruined it for my couple of mates I had round because this was back in the time where Sky Sports had player cam.
Oh,
and I had player cam on for no reason at all, but of Marcus Stewart. So I was watching and I could see the ball fly in. And
Not the
I just
fan
remember
cam.
no, the player cam where
Yes, but they just
one
filmed a
player
single player.
around the pitch, effectively. So
Yeah.
I was just following Marcus Stewart around for no reason because it was a new bit of technology, annoying my friends that were there, and then he scored, and no one really knew what happened apart from me. So it was one of those. But yeah, like I say, Holland just tees the ball up for him. And he just lets it drop over his shoulder and hits it first time, and Jaskalainen sort of
Gets a hand.
it's like he doesn't know where to dive for it. And he sort of ends up trying to palm across, and it just goes right in the top corner. It's just you sort of see from the celebrations, the whole team is straight over to the bench, and it's like, right, we've now got a chance in this game now. Even if we would just keep it to 2-1, I think at that point, I think most TFC fans would have been happy to come away like that.
Well, we kept playing, didn't we, Mikey? The goal comes at a really good time because if Bolton get a third, you kind of feel like the playoff ties are over straight away. So, as always, this third goal going to Ipswich, but the fact it's Marcus Stewart as well. The pressure is on him because Jono's just gone off, who's the top scorer. But
he hasn't scored for 8 games.
Yeah, exactly right. It's pivotal for lots of different reasons, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you listen back to Dave and Ben's podcast, they talked about the importance of momentum, and the timing of that goal was just absolutely perfect because it was just when we were starting to give up hope a little bit, and the quality of the goal as well. It must have been so inspiring for the other players that are out there, knowing that they had that £2.5 million striker up front, and that he was actually back to his best because they hadn't seen that for a while.
And we rarely score goals like that either. That was a really un-Ipswich goal of someone just taking a punt. In the post-match interview, he says it's a lucky shot, Stewart. I don't know. I think he means it, and it's lucky in that it's physics and gravity and all that kind of stuff. But I think he exactly knows what he's doing, and I like to think he points to Holland where to put it as well. And yeah, really big moment. And there's also this kind of Matt Holland to Burley moment, like Lineker to Bobby Robson in 1990 when Gazza gets booked in the semi-final. He kind of looks at him and gets instructions, and I always remember that moment as well as kind of an interesting moment. The rest of the kind of first half plays out with a little incident, but Ipswich are buoyed by that. And second half start, Stewart has got I think it's
an absolute sitter.
It's a sitter, isn't it? Scully heads the ball back over. I can't. It's a long ball from that left, which makes me think
it must be Venus. Yeah,
it's Venus or Clapham.
Yeah, almost certainly Venus.
And Scully's headed back, and Stewart is in complete acres. And does he lean back, Mikey, Joe? Is this?
Yeah, well, it's on his right foot, isn't it, as well, rather than his left. And so he just skies it, really. It's only about 8 yards out, isn't it?
Yeah. Right in front of the away support as well.
Yeah, I mean, a difficult chance for a lot of strikers, like a weaker foot half volley.
Yeah.
But for Marcus Stewart, yeah, you would have expected him to at least hit the target there.
Could have taken a touch, perhaps. There's a few sights for Bolton, and there's chances. And this is an end-to-end game. Watching back the highlights, we go direct at times as well, Venus, and that will help us in the second leg as well. But it's an end-to-end game, really frenetic stuff. Yeah, guys, we're going to equalise partway through the second half. Clapham and Roycer. Clapham plays the ball with the outside of his boot. He prods it through to Roycer and takes out 2 Bolton players. Roycer is in. Stewart is on his right, and this is an iconic. I said the Stewart goal before was good, but this is the better goal, isn't it, Mikey? This is just poetry, isn't it? Talk us through this.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the thing is, as an 8-year-old watching it on the telly, I didn't really appreciate just how good it was because it's only really the ones that are from way out that you really admire as brilliant goals. But as I've got older, I've started to appreciate it more and more and more. And it's one of my favourite Ipswich goals. So it's a really nice exchange between Martin Roycer and Jamie Clapham, who weren't on the pitch together that often, I don't think, because of the position that Roycer plays. And it's a 2-on-1, and usually you'd expect Roycer to just start running towards the goal, but he plays the perfect pass out to Marcus Stewart, who then does his usual, gives the keeper the eyes, sits Jaskalainen down, but takes it wide onto his right foot. And then just like Johnson did to the Ipswich defenders, he takes that perfect touch back onto his left foot, and the Bolton players sort of all of their momentum takes them to one post, and he just bends it into the other corner, right into the side netting. And if you pause it as I did when I was watching this back, if you pause it at the moment that he hits it, it's pretty much the only part of the goal where you could be guaranteed that it would go in, and it's just beautiful, wasn't it?
He's got two defenders and the keeper, who I think he beats twice in this move. Joe, at the time, are you shouting shoot?
Shoot! Yeah, because also because he's left-footed, it's sort of not the best chance for him, because when he goes in, if it's a right foot, you don't even need to take it around the keeper. You've just got a clear shot, because it was quite an easy angle he was coming at, and it's just like, just hit it, and then he goes, and then he sort of goes, and it's just, it seemed to, like, time seemed to stand still. It felt like for an eternity when it went in, and just, when you, like, I can't imagine what it was like in the ground for the fans there, just the sort of gasp for airs that would have been going round, but it just seemed to stand still, and then just, when that hit the back of the net, just the elation was unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's absolute scenes, as the kids say.
Bit of a cameo behind Joe there for those watching on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether when I edit it together that will be seen. So we'll just chuck Joe under the bus there, and hello to Mrs. Joe if that was her in the background.
Yeah,
but
yeah, just a quick comment on this, Rich. There's no better feeling as a football fan than a really good, important goal in front of the away end, is there? And
they all celebrate with the fans, don't they?
600 Ipswich fans. Stewart jumps the boardings and gets up to celebrate with the fans, and all the fans come running down. And at that moment, I think we were starting to think, yeah, we're going to do this. It's going to be all right. Get them back to Portman Road. We'll be fine.
Yeah, it's easy, plain sailing straight. The thing I remember from the TV footage of this one as well, and God rest him, is Dale Roberts goes up. He has this moment where he allows himself to go totally crazy and then reins it back in. I always love that moment. He kind of
brilliant. Yeah,
I love that bit. And Ipswich are the dominant team towards the end with no Mowbray, no Johnson, back from 2 goals down. Roycer has a chance. Majilton, this is a great chance on the edge of the area. Gets his head over the ball and volleys it. It just clips the kind of bit on the top of the net. Roycer gets a corner in that clips over the top as well. But guys, it kind of felt like we'd watched 3 matches in one there, kind of all kinds of incident. But full time, 2-2, Marcus Stewart with both iconic goals of recent times, aren't they? I don't think that's an understatement. And your feeling presumably is the second leg is ours, is it?
Job done almost. Not for the tie, but for the away leg certainly. Job done.
And Mikey, your
yeah, well, I think my overriding feeling at the time was my first ever away game was the away leg at Bolton the previous season. I thought, why bloody hell didn't we go to this one?
Picked the wrong one.
But yeah, I so confident now after 2-2 away at Bolton. So confident going into the second leg.
Let's move it 3 days forward. I remember being knackered watching that as well. I remember because it was a midday kickoff, a 12:30 kickoff, and so you're done after about 2-3 o'clock. And I remember just being absolutely knackered for the rest of the day. It was quite an emotional. I can't imagine what it was like being there, but yeah, well, that is the next game going to top it, guys, because there is something to be said, and I've not experienced this at Ipswich. Maybe for the Norwich playoff match, when there is an important game at Portman Road in the evening, there is like this buzz or aura around Portman Road, isn't there? There's like it's almost tangible how you can feel the anticipation of the match, and that night was no different. It was probably my heart was beating the most it's ever done in a football match, because you kind of felt this could be our year, and all kinds of narrative going around it. Joe, what was your sense going into this one? Can you remember the walk to Portman Road?
I'd made a stupid decision because basically I'd worked out sort of a couple of years earlier that when the school does a theatre trip to London, you can just sign up to go and you get the day off school. So the day of the Bolton game, I was going to London on a school trip.
No way.
So having to get back, and I sort of turned up for it in like Ipswich shirt, flag, wig, for the back, which I don't think was particularly impressive. Obviously, Rich knows where we went to school, and it wasn't sort of the done thing to turn up like that.
I know a couple of our teachers would have wanted to go. So.
Where was your top hat?
Yeah, so we ended up. I didn't get back into it. The game had started because there was so much traffic, and I ended up getting dropped off at the top of like Alderman Road, where you can cut through down there with Mr. Goodhand and another guy. We jumped off the bus and ran down there, and another teacher who had a season ticket had to go all the way back up to the school to let the other kids off
No
before
way.
Mr. Burnett had to go back up to school and come down. So he must have missed most of the first half. But so that was not the best bit of planning for me. And I got in. We'd just gone 1-0 down as I got off the bus, so I got in there just after that.
I can't believe they didn't cancel it, knowing that it was those teachers involved. But anyway, so Mikey, can you remember your walk to the ground, or did you have some, theatre plans beforehand?
No, I must have been at school that day and probably not being able to think about anything else. But when you're that age, even though I'd witnessed what had happened the year before with Bolton and also the Charlton games as well, I was too young for the Sheffield United ones. You always feel like it's going to be all right, and I would have probably just been so confident walking to the ground, thinking we're better than them. We finished third. And probably left it to my mum and dad to be nervous wrecks going to that one.
I think it's worth also saying that it's Birmingham and Barnsley in the other playoff semi-final. I think Birmingham won their game. Barnsley won the game 4-0, I think, in the first leg, or something stupid like that.
They absolutely
ended the tie.
Yeah.
And I think, given our record against Birmingham in recent years, I think that was more of a fearsome. Having beaten Barnsley 6-0 or whatever it was earlier in the season as well, and 2-0 away. They weren't a fearsome opposition, were they? So,
well, Barnsley were a side that tried to play football, and anyone that tried to play football, I'd always back us against. But Barnsley were a footballing side, whereas the teams we struggled against, Birmingham, Bolton, Sheffield United, Wolves, those teams that were big teams that bullied us, and it happened to us too often in those years that we always got bullied by those teams. And sort of when you saw Barnsley waiting for us in the final, we'd beaten them. I think we'd beaten them twice that year, quite handily once as well. And I didn't have any fear of Barnsley at all.
And I think that adds to the kind of sense of
pressure,
occasion here, or what have you. But going into the match, Allardyce, I'm going to give you plenty of Sam Allardyce quotes, by the way, before and after this match. I hope that going into the playoff scenario for the fourth time on the trot will weigh down on the players mentally, so we can capitalise on that, said Big Sam before the game. And to your point, Joe, it seems to me that the tactic on this night is to bully Ipswich off the pitch. You mentioned it already. There's a big kind of disappointment for them. Idago Johnson's not fit, doesn't travel. But Johnson and Mogger are fit 3 days in between. I don't think Mowbray would be allowed to do that now, would he? Concussion or what have you? He probably doesn't play.
I don't know if it was concussion or whether he just had
He's got a black eye, certainly.
Yeah, but also Wayne Brown, didn't he, came in for Manuel Fetis, so he'd come on and played sort of 60 minutes in the first leg, and Manu, after trying to dribble his way out of his own 6-yard box, had been dropped. Yeah,
so it's two changes of Wayne Brown and you've already mentioned as well before Gary Croft comes in for Fabian Vilnius. Bolton, I think this is more of a 4-3-3 now, with Johnson missing out, or 4-5-1. Same back four. Jensen, Warhurst.
Sorry, Rich. Did Good Johnson get injured leading up to this game?
I'm not sure. I don't know what happens. I'm trying to find out, and it just said he didn't travel. That's all I could find out.
Yeah, he must have been injured. But it turned out that was his last game for Bolton.
Well, he's not on the bench, so he doesn't even make the trip down to Pullman Road. But a massive boost for Ipswich. It's Elliott who comes in for him effectively, and Johansson and Johnston kind of push up to be around Holdsworth, who's the one man up front. And the referee is one Barry Knight from Orpington. More on him as we go. The first minute, this isn't relevant in the grand scheme of things, but it's important to build the narrative. Paul Warhurst absolutely clatters Scoey in the first minute. It's a town free kick from the kickoff, basically, as Warhurst goes in. And I think Bolton, this was a tactic, Joe, that they were going to do from the off. They were going to get in our faces and kick us off the pitch, weren't they?
Yep. And they were just... It was almost one of the most... Because they were a good side as well. I think that was the problem. They were a good side. And I just thought that I thought the game plan was an absolute disgrace from Allardyce, and for all his whinging after the game, I thought they were... For a good side to put in a performance like that, I thought was disgusting, really, and they got their just desserts.
again, as in the previous game, Johnson is in and has a chance early on, forces Jääskeläinen to tip around the post. This was a weird moment as well. Wayne Brown has a slip just inside his own half, and Johansson effectively tries to lob Richard Wright from 50 yards. He's way off his line. Yeah. It was kind of heart and mouth stuff straight on, Mikey, wasn't it? There's plenty of end-to-end action, but that was a weird one. It
lands on the roof of the net, doesn't it?
Yeah, just on the roof of the net. I remember feeling so scared when he hit that, and that was Johansson's turned out to be his last ever game for Bolton as well, because there was a bit of talk before how he wanted his last game to be at Wembley rather than at Portman Road, and he started the game on fire.
Yeah. And 6 minutes in, guys, a similar time to the goal going in at the Reebok. Bolton are going to take the lead. Johansson it is who pumps in a high cross. Let's have we're going to have debates for all of these decisions, so we may as well start as we mean to go on. Robbie Elliott jumps at Richard Wright, who kind of spills the cross as he's trying to gather it, and Holdsworth's Johnny on the spot and kind of toe pokes it, prods it in to an empty net. What does the VAR panel think on this one? Is it a foul on Richard Wright? Yes or no? There's 3 of us as well, by the way, so we're going to have a majority.
Yes.
Should we talk through? We haven't mentioned where were we sat in the stadium for this game.
Yeah, so I'm in the south stand behind the goal.
I'm in sort of where the sky box is, that sort of area in the family enclosure in the middle tier of the Pioneer stand, as it was.
Okay.
To the right, sort of towards the Churchman's End. Yeah.
Go on, Mike.
Okay, so I was in the what was then known as the Britannia stand, upper tier but near the front, on the edge of the penalty area. To the north stand.
North stand end. Okay. So
at this point, I was on the bus looking at.
Oh yeah, so we can't
listen to Radio Suffolk.
Well, I'm going to say this now. I was desperate to see the referee give that as a foul, and looking back, and we were all adamant that it was a foul.
Yeah.
Looking back now, it wasn't a foul. He's just Richard Wright.
I think it's a foul. I think it's a foul. I think Richard Wright should do better and he should be stronger. But when you look at it back, is it Elliot? His arm is in between Wright's head and his arm, so he is putting pressure on his shoulder effectively, and that's a foul. You can't
touch him though.
No, but like I said, when you look at it back, that arm is in there, and it does pull Wright's arm down a little bit. So, like I say, the way that goalkeepers are protected, it's mad that it wasn't allowed.
Yeah,
it happened in the first leg. Wright gets bullied into the net as well. Someone jumps.
Should we talk about the celebration?
Remind me, Mikey. I didn't note this one down. What is he?
Okay,
he doesn't do that.
This is he really cups his ear.
Oh yeah.
But he actually cups his ear in the direction of the Britannia stand rather than the North stand, which was an interesting choice. And it was at that moment that he became public enemy number 1.
Yeah, he loved it, though,
Ipswich
didn't
fans. And yeah, I don't think I'd ever heard my mum swear before until that moment.
Wow.
Was it the C-bomb?
I don't think she's ever said that
go
word.
Go big or go home.
It was colourful.
So we've got kind of this anti-hero for Bolton and Holdsworth who's going to put his stamp on this game one way or the other. Another person who's going to do exactly the same for Ipswich is one Jim Magilton, who had fleeting moments in the first leg. I mentioned that volley from outside the area that nearly dips in, but this is the start of just an amazing 90 minutes for Magilton, and another decision, guys, for us to debate. I'm not sure there's much debate in this one. Magilton with a lovely 1-2 with Johnson gets the ball back on the edge of the area, and Whitlow, it is a kind of scorpion flick behind himself and pulls Magilton down. It's the first of many sets of handbags from the Bolton players around Barry Knight for a decision, but this is a no-brainer decision, is it? There's no arguments about this one, Joe.
Yep, definite foul. More terrible conduct from Bolton.
Mikey?
Yeah, 100%.
Consensus.
It's probably
here.
the most blatant.
Yeah, and this is also where, so I'm going to come back to it at the end. Bolton are going to get in trouble for this, more the second one actually than the first. But all of them are crowding around Barry Knight. There's a lot of, it's kind of Man United to, was it Paul Durso? Who was it who Man United crowd? Andy Durso, sorry. I'm thinking Paul Durkin. Andy D'Urso, and this kind of gamesmanship is going on. Magilton has plenty of time to think about this one, and it's a nice penalty, isn't it, Mike? He dispatches it well.
Yeah, good height for the goalkeeper, but right in the side netting, and he sort of seems to stop his celebration, celebrates in the face of Mike Whitlow a little bit. I mean,
just a
little
bit.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Magilton extensively over the next half an hour or so, but the Bolton players were clearly so pumped and so up for the game. The difference between them and Magilton is that Magilton, it was just controlled aggression, just absolutely man possessed, but without kicking people.
Although, Joe, I think you're right. I think that was not a subtle celebration, was it, Vi? That's the one time where he kind of let it go away from him, right up in his grill, wasn't he? But a good moment, and good to stick it back to him as well. So how are you guys feeling at this point? I mean, this is again, you kind of you've come from
you feel
behind.
like now it's our time to take control of now again, don't you? You think, right, we're back on terms, time to get back in front or in front.
Yeah, and it's not to be, and it's that man again, Holdsworth, who's gonna again put Ipswich fans back on their seats in misery. 39 minutes. It's a foul on Johnston by Gary Croft on the edge of the box, and this goal. I look at the video now. Obviously, I couldn't see this at the time, being the opposite end. But Richard Wright here takes two crucial steps to his right here. I'm not going to take anything away from this free kick, because this is a perfectly placed free kick, isn't it, from Holdsworth? But Richard Wright, if he takes those...
He got caught out a number of times doing that in his career. I remember, even like when we went up, that sort of David Beckham free kick on the first home game is one where he's gone a long way across. But it's a brilliant free kick from Holdsworth, isn't it?
And off the post as well.
There's a lot of movement, isn't there? And I think he tries to get a view of it because there's so many bodies moving around it, and he just...
Yeah, I think about three Bolton players run over the ball before he strikes it.
Yeah, and it just flies in off the post, and it's like...
There's about 8 players in the wall as well, and so Wright really doesn't. He needs to trust his wall a little bit there. But I think those two. Have a watch of the goal again. Those two crucial steps, just as he's walking up to strike.
There's a long way across, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah. And again, having done the hard stuff, Ipswich find themselves behind again. But big opportunity just before half time. Venus to Stewart. With a lovely Magilton dummy, kind of to let the ball pass through and reach Stewart on the edge. And to me, Richie, he stops the ball in moving, but he totally wipes out Stewart, doesn't he, guys? Where's our VAR panel on this one?
I think it's one of those ones where if it hadn't been given, I think you could have understood it, because he does get the ball, but it's just such an over-the-top challenge that he doesn't really even need to slide there. It's like he could get the ball just by sticking his toe out, but they're so... As a team, like I've spoken to Bolton fans about this previously, about this game, and because this game wasn't on Sky, I don't think a lot of people would see how bad they were through the whole game. They were so riled up. They were so in the ref's face all game, flying into tackles, and... I say this one, it was just a totally unnecessary challenge that you're giving the ref a decision to make, and he does wipe out Marcus Stewart. He may get the ball, but he 2-foots him in the calf effectively.
He absolutely wallops him, doesn't he? It's excessive force.
Yeah, and like I say, I could see the argument for it not being given, but I can't see anybody being able to stand up and honestly say that there's no way that should be a penalty.
There are some absolute proper handbags. Toys get chucked out the pram
Paul
here.
Warhurst,
Whitlow, and Bergson. You need to watch the video. Goodney Bergson looks like he's going to pop his head. His face is... He's got snarling teeth. He's got a red face. He turns away from Knight and looks straight down the barrel of the camera, and then turns around and goes back for more. This is a really nasty, spiteful little bit of histrionics from Bolton. This is right in front of me, and people are shouting for yellow cards and red cards. I think possibly Holdsworth might get something here. I'm trying to remember back. I don't think Whitlow does. I don't think Bergson does either. And again, more histrionics. Warhurst stops Magilton from taking the penalty, and has to have a gets told off as well. And Mikey, you mentioned it in relation to the first penalty. Jim tries more of the same, and it doesn't work for him.
Yeah, I mean it's an almost identical penalty. I think the ball's heading for the side of the goal, but Jääskeläinen this time is at proper full stretch, and it's a brilliant save. And even and then Jääskeläinen turns to the Churchmans and gives it some, doesn't he? Really unfinished like behaviour from Jääskeläinen.
I don't know what they were on before. I don't know what Allardyce has said for them before the game.
Yeah,
but they are on.
It added to the atmosphere, didn't it? Like I'm so glad all of these things happened, because they just made it the most perfect football match for an Ipswich fan.
And that is half time, guys. I don't think there's anything else of note there. Ipswich find themselves 2-1 behind. Bolton are losing it a little bit, and Magilton has kind of gone from hero to villain within the space of about 20 minutes. But shortly after half time, guys, I mean, this is.
But I like saying at half time, it's one of those games. It's so bad tempered that you almost forget the score of the game at certain points, don't you? Just because you almost forget that you're losing, because it feels like it's such a battle you're in that you sort of forget you're behind.
Yeah, it's a great shout. Yeah. It's similar to the first game as well. It's because it's just so relentless as well. As you say, there's so much incident, and again, you kind of feel this game isn't over, despite it being half time, and Magilton's going to come back again, and Mikey, and this is, I mean, there are so many legs and bits and pieces in the way here, but it's a Venus ball. That Johnson, I think Johnson's fouled in this.
Stepping out from. You think it's fouled? Yeah. Well, Venus again just stepping out of defence brilliantly, and I think he curls this one on the outside of his left foot, and Johnson and Stewart were doing this all night. They were just laying it off first time. And I suppose he probably did get clattered, but Magilton just controls the ball dead, and then he just sort of weaves in and out. He wasn't particularly quick, Magilton, but he's just taking so many touches, and that makes it so hard. And he weaves in, weaves out, and then he absolutely lashes it across Jääskeläinen into the top corner. And I can actually remember, as he was running with the ball, I was still eating my sweets from half time. And I think as he started to get closer to the goal, I just sort of panicked and just shoved all of the sweets into my mouth. And then when it went in, I couldn't even really shout because my mouth was just full of these sweets. But it was, as an 8-year-old kid, you just seen Magilton score the most brilliant goal, and you got a mouthful of sweets. It doesn't really get much better than that, does it?
And this is when I miss the old North Stand, because it's not a big ground, is it? But it's just deafening in there, isn't it, Joe? Electric atmosphere. And the North Stand in the olden days, before it became two-tiered and had an open roof effectively that lets the noise escape, the North Stand on nights like these was a fearsome sound, wasn't it?
Even on a bad night, the North Stand was still noisy, just because that roof had just held the sound in so well. But like I say, when you compare it to nowadays, I never sat in the North Stand when it was like that. But nowadays you get in it and it's, I don't know, it's hard to create an atmosphere for the North Stand even. Yeah,
and that was crucial on that night, and an argument potentially that it influenced the referee potentially on certain decisions that are coming up later on. 50 minutes, guys, we've scored straight from the kick-off. It's a foul deep in the Bolton half, pumped forwards, and Holdsworth does great here. You know, he holds off the defender, I don't know who it is, chests it into the path of Johnston, and you got to be honest, Joe, this is a really lovely goal, isn't it? I mean, it's an absolute kick in the buff.
Absolute gut punch, this one, because it just felt back on terms, and the way they went ahead straight away, it's just like, this is not our night. This is it. This is sort of 3 times they've gone ahead, and sort of as soon as we try and get any sort of momentum or foothold back in the game, it's just stripped back from us. And I don't know, it's a really good goal, Alan Johnston, wasn't it? And sort of that's down at our end, and you just see the Richard Wright sort of flailing, going for it, and it's just killer. I was looking straight at that coming towards the goal, and you kind of knew it was going to go in as well. You kind of, when it went in, you kind of thought,
Yeah, I did not need this, having just taken the lead, but it was such a perfectly struck shot as well, out of nowhere, and I don't think anyone had really tuned into what was going on. Bolton are smart. It's quite a quick set piece. Even the camera for the highlights don't pick up on it, and Ipswich have it all to do again. And this is when I've just bigged up the North Stand, but there's about half an hour after this goal until Magilton gets himself a hat trick, where it goes really flat, doesn't
Rich,
it?
just one thing though that you didn't mention is that we almost scored immediately from kickoff after Johnston's goal, because Venus pumps one long and Johnson gets in and he makes a good connection. Yaskalainen.
Yeah, is this the volley where he's falling over?
It was almost 3 goals in 1 minute of playing time. Just absolutely outrageous. Just an outrageous game of football, wasn't it?
Typical for that game. In 65 minutes, Roycer is brought on for Brown. I think Town shift to a 4-4-2 here. I'm not going to pretend that it makes any kind of noticeable difference. It's Bolton who are largely controlling Ipswich, have sights, but 79 minutes, this is a real problem. Scowcroft goes up for a header, innocuous kind of looking header, and he kind of lands awkwardly and immediately feels for his hamstring, and he has to be brought off. And Richard Naylor comes on, and he's going to have his moment in a few weeks' time, back in 2000, Naylor at Wembley. But you wouldn't he wasn't my favourite.
Been player of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, and
big loss.
And Naylor hadn't really ever delivered the goods when it kind of needed. He's a solid player certainly, but definitely a bench option. And you kind of got the feeling as the game was kind of ebbing away that we were just going to lose out. And yet, Joe, from seemingly nowhere, Venus again, Joe. This is a punt, isn't it? This is a hoof it and hope it moment, isn't it? And what's Tony Mowbray doing up? What's he doing up there?
Well, Mowbray's obviously been chucked up front, hasn't he, for the last few minutes, and he could have had a career as a knockdown striker when you see the quality of this, because the ball is it's nowhere really near him, and he gets across the ball and from one side of it manages to sort of head it down the other way to lay it off Magilton, and it just sits there. Magilton shins it really, and it just Jaskalainen doesn't move because is it like a shin roller almost? It sort of rolls down and flicks off and just goes straight in the corner, and it's just the place erupts. And I think when that went in, I think there was no way we were going to lose from that point, because I think Bolton were just so ragged at this point, and they were so dirty. They probably had about 4 players on bookings at this point, and were just. I don't think they had anything left to go again at this point. And when that went in, and sort of famous Magilton celebration where he runs and slides down, and Gary Croft and an unnamed member of the North Stand joined him.
Yeah,
it's just. I said that is just the most.
Surely one of.
Job, isn't it?
Yeah, surely one of our listeners must know who was that guy in the blue jumper.
I don't think
I've always wanted to know that.
You can't get done for now.
What he said to Mike Whitlow in the first half.
Magilton's not happy to see him either.
There was another moment. I think it might have been a later goal, but I seem to remember after the limbs of one of those goals in front of the North Stand, a fan getting carried off on a stretcher.
Oh, I don't remember
and he was sort of giving a fist pump at the crowd as they were cheering him off. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I hope it's the last one. You don't want to miss any of this match. I think Mogger gets a penalty here if he doesn't win the ball. I think Fish is fouling him, doesn't he?
Yeah,
I don't think
Mogger back in. I'm not sure.
I don't think it'd have been given.
But yeah, just one of those. I think one of those moments where the immediate reaction is to cheer. The second reaction is, I think I laughed. Because the game has it all, doesn't it? I mean, this is in post Bobby Robson era. This is one of the most narrative-laden, exciting games of football I think anyone has ever seen. Right? I mean, even as a neutral,
the guy in front of me. This is the year before. So I was season ticket holder. So the year before, the guy in front of me had left when it was 2-2 because he didn't, or 2-1 was it? We equalised in the last. We scored in the last minute of extra time, of injury time in the first year, and he'd left because he thought we were out, and then he came back during extra time to watch the extra time. the same thing happened again this year because we were 3-2 down. He thought away goal still counted, so he'd left, missed the goal, and came back for the extra time. It's like 2 years in a row. It's like, did you not learn your lesson last year not to do this? But him and his daughter left. It's just like.
But it's one of those ones where there's kind of the rubbing the eyes gif or something like that. I can't imagine Twitter, someone following this online in the current era, being out. You'd run out of characters. Just unbelievable. And Joe's mentioned it, the kind of the pendulum swinging Ipswich's way, and this is reinforced when a few minutes later, Stewart gets in behind Mike Whitlow, who kind of falls over, not particularly dramatically and not particularly violently either. But Barry Knight's had enough, Mikey, and it's good night to Mike Whitlow. Do you think this is a harsh decision? I think this is a straight red. He should have probably been booked in the first half of December.
I always thought it was a second yellow, but it wasn't. It was a straight red.
Yeah, Tony Jones says it's a straight red, which is incredibly harsh, but absolutely incredible that he hadn't already been booked.
Yeah,
and I wonder whether that was playing in Barry Knight's mind, where he thought, I should have booked him. So if he does another foul
in the first half,
I will give him a straight red, because obviously it was a dodgy decision from a Bolton perspective, but had he have shown a yellow and then a red, it would have been, hang on, you didn't give him the yellow in the first
so it
would have technically been wrong. So I think Barry Knight had a bit of a blinder there.
Yeah, well, and I mentioned
unbiased opinion.
It's at the North Stand end, and I wonder whether that has a swaying impact as well, because it's a buoyant North Stand at this point, and seconds later as well, corner from Roycer flashes across, and Johnson suddenly is in acres of space, relatively speaking, in the penalty area, but can't direct the ball on target. That could have won it in the 90 minutes. Portman Road is bouncing at this point, and we are into the lottery. Well, not the lottery yet, is it? Extra time. I'm trying to get my cliches right. But guys, we are feeling. I remember there being a lot of chatter, a lot of noise between the end of the normal time and extra time starting. What is your mood at this point? Presumably, Mikey, it's bedtime, right?
Yeah, had to go home.
Wait, yeah, I went home. That was it. Yeah, 3-3 draw, take a point. Yeah, I think I was confident before the game, and I'm sure that I was ultra confident at this stage. You don't go through the same emotions watching these sort of games as a kid. But that doesn't mean that I look back on them any less fondly than anyone that was there as an adult. I can remember you feel excitement and euphoria just as much, but you don't feel maybe the emotion. You can't quite take it all in. But I remember being ultra confident at this stage against 10 men.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
10 men, and they were so ragged at this point as well. I think it was just
the heads are gone, haven't they, Joe?
I think they knew that they were out at that point as well. I think they knew that if it was going to extra time, there was no way they were going to sort of be able to survive
and the sending off, Joe, as well.
That
had been in the post, that red card for one of their players, and as soon as you lose a man and you're playing against a team who can pass it around as well, they're always going to be up against it. Fifth minute, I think this is of extra time, guys. Again, this is one where Bolton fans and pundits seem to think this is harsh. The highlights, by the way, are on YouTube from the Granada region, as it was back then. You can listen to the commentary by Alistair Mann, I think it is.
Alistair Mann, yeah. Quite strange. It's quite a strange bloke, Alistair Mann. I've met him before, but
go on, Mikey.
Yeah, I think Tony Jones was the ITV Anglia commentator. So it wasn't like he was completely impartial, and you can sense that at times, that because it benefited Tony Jones if Ipswich got promoted, because then he'd be able to report on Premier League football. And Alistair Mann was probably in the same position up in Lancashire. The commentary is absolutely outrageous on the BBC Granada one, or ITV Granada, whatever it was, just absolutely outrageous, like gunning for Barry Knight, just so unbelievably biased towards Bolton. It was just ridiculous.
I think at least Tony Jones talks through the incidents and kind of reaches a conclusion which is in Ipswich's favour, which aligns with the referee, but at least he justifies it here, because this one is let me explain it, talk this through again. We've kind of talked about Ipswich's passing style, but a lot of these key moments come from Venus, just threading direct balls where they need to go. Naylor, it is involved in getting the ball head to it. Johnson goes up for another header. And Joe, what the hell is Paul Ritchie thinking about here? Because the ball is in Jaskalainen's hand, isn't it?
Yeah, the ball's sort of between him and Jaskalainen, and he just swings round and throws Johnson to the floor like a wrestling move. It's just, again, what are you doing? Like, yeah, the ball had gone, but why are you throwing a striker to the ground in the box at any point?
Yeah, and as I say, the ball is back with Jaskalainen at that point anyway. It just seems really petulant, and there's no chance for Magilton to redeem himself. He's taken 2 penalties at the South Stand end already that evening. 50% strike rate. Jamie Clapham steps up. Mikey steps up. It takes him a while to place the ball. I remember that. How were your nerves at Jamie Clapham as a penalty taker? Because I'm not sure he'd ever taken one for us before.
I think he'd taken one that season.
Go on, Joe.
You might be right.
You're getting your Rothmans football book out, Joe.
No, I can't find it. I'm just sure when I watched the highlights yesterday, I noticed him taking one, but probably not.
So I remember. Yeah, Magilton hadn't taken that many either, because I think David Johnson might have been. Oh no, Venus was a penalty taker, and then Johnson.
Yeah, Venus missed 2 in a week. Against Blackburn, where we drew another one, where we drew 0-0.
Yeah.
Then Johnson came in, scored one, and then missed one, and then Magilton took the next one, scored it, and then
Magilton scored at QPR. Very similar penalties against Bolton, and I was expecting Clapham to put it to the goalkeeper's left, and I'm still not sure whether he meant to, or
straight down the middle,
or whether he meant to go straight down the middle with his side foot. If he did, it's pretty ballsy, but we'll take it.
Well, I guess he's assuming that Jaskalainen was really committing to these, wasn't he? The second penalty, Magilton, as you say, and I'll give him the credit there. His a side foot finished right down the middle, isn't it? It's quite nonchalant.
Very composed customer, Jamie Clapham, wasn't he? Very composed.
Yeah, and Portman Road guys believes at this point. This is this is starting to click.
Well, this is done at this point, isn't it? It's almost like get the champagne out.
And then Bolton become their worst enemies here. This is stupid. Ipswich are at this point kind of, it's a little bit of champagne football, side footing, passing in front of the Portman stand, I guess they would have been at that point. Now the Cobbold stand. Clapham lays it down the side for Royster to chase onto, and right in front of the Bolton lower tier supporters, Elliott flies into the back of him, doesn't he?
That's an awful. And this was only a second yellow.
It's a second yellow, isn't it?
And he's moaning about it being a second yellow. That could have been 2 red cards. It's that bad. It's a career ender. It's one. He's just flown into no attempt to play the ball. Just smashed into the back of his legs, 2-footed, sort of into the middle of his calves. Horrible, horrible tackle. And they're moaning about getting a second booking for it.
Yeah, there's something really familiar about it as somebody that plays Sunday League football, watching Robbie Elliott not only do the tackle, but then just point at the ball as if to say, I won the ball.
He looks concerned though, doesn't he? He does look concerned.
Yeah. It's like, it doesn't really work like that.
No. Look, I got it. Yeah, that is the ball, but you didn't get it, mate.
Ball's right there, ref.
Yeah.
And nonsense.
And that to me is typifies where Bolton had got to that point. The tactic to bully us fails. In fortunate circumstances, Ipswich kind of with the last minute equaliser, but the plan's out of the window now, and Bolton know it, as Joe said, and it's a case of can Ipswich get another one? 9 men they're up against. I think we take it quite easy. Croft hits a long range volley that just dips onto the roof of the net, which is quite close. Bolton have their moments as well. There's a push forward here for Bolton, but the defence gets in and clears it. Johnson heads on to Naylor. Naylor holds off, I think, Ritchie and gets away from him. And this is poetry, guys. Who wants to talk through this goal? Because every time I think about this goal and I hear the commentary in my mind, goosebumps for this moment. Joe, do you want to talk us through this one?
It's just Royster, isn't it? He's away and he sort of shapes to come inside, but then just drags it across onto his weaker left foot, and it's like just hammers it like an arrow into the top corner. And when I was watching, like I said, when I was watching all this back yesterday, you forget how good certain players are, how well they can strike a ball. And one is sort of Royce, and in the final, Craig Hignett as well. They just hit a ball like sort of little backlift and just absolutely hammer it. It's like, I forget what it's like to watch good players, because I've been watching League One football all year. You forget how well good players strike the ball almost.
And we've kind of mentioned it down to 9 men, Mikey, but Naylor does really well here. He creates this chance. Royce is totally unmarked, isn't he? But this is good from Naylor.
He absolutely bullies Richie. Just
fairly
takes it round him without. Yeah. He doesn't. I don't think he drops his shoulder or anything like that. He just uses his body and uses his pace and power, and just threads the perfect through ball. And Royce has got no right to score from that position on his weaker foot, but just absolutely whips it across the keeper. And the overriding memory for me was, obviously, it was just pure elation in the stadium, but seeing the fans in the cobbled stand dancing on the executive boxes.
Really?
I'd never seen that before, and I'm not sure I've seen it since. Only away supporters, yeah. It was just absolutely just brilliant, just mesmerising.
But there's palpable relief though as well in that, isn't there, Mikey?
Yeah, and watching back the highlights from the whole season, you can hear a fan invade the commentary box and try and shout down the microphone. It's 4-3.
Well, no, so there's the guy.
Done it. 4-3 up.
That's the Clapham one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's another guy. I think
absolutely classic.
I think Tony Jones gets man hugged by someone as well. You could hear someone go.
Yeah. Yeah, but he keeps his composure. Class act, Tony Jones.
Yeah, good man, Tony Jones, and the commentary is part of the goal for me. I love watching that goal back. And Ipswich are safe at this point. For once, there's no coming back for 9 men Bolton. Though in the last bit, they do have a corner where Richard Wright has to make a diving save, and Venus has to get his way in the rebound. But that is full time. Now, big question. Which of you pitch invaded the pitch, I should say? Did you get?
I was on the pitch. Yeah, I was on there. I only used to go with my sister, so we didn't have parents to stop us. So me and my sister went down on the pitch, and I remember Marcus Stewart he was like hobbling off, sort of having stewards carry him off, and one of the stewards was clearing his way and smacked me in the throat. So I was couldn't breathe for the next bit, and then I went across and nicked some grass from the penalty spot at the south stand end, and then we just sort of found our way home from that point.
Brilliant. Mikey, were you allowed?
Well, no, it would have taken a fair bit of time because we were in the upper tier. But it was just brilliant to watch everyone running on the pitch as well. It wasn't like a tin pot pitch invasion like when Norwich beat us in the playoffs. Sorry to use that word, tin pot. That's poor, but
I think it's cliches all night.
You could barely see a patch of grass on the pitch. It was just brilliant, and I remember admiring.
There's no frauds
as a kid. No frauds. Hopefully no nonces either. I remember being really impressed when I first watched back the highlights. The moment the whistle blows, a young Ipswich fan jumps on the pitch from the cobblestone and dives on the ball.
Right.
And I'd like to think that he's still got the ball. When you watch it back,
straight away you do see that. Yeah.
Watch the ball.
I never noticed that. I'll have to go and watch it.
Yeah.
Who are
absolutely.
you? We need to find.
Who are you?
Who invaded the pitch to hug Magellan on the centre spot? Who's got the ball from the 99-2000 playoff semi-final? So I'm on the pitch.
And who was the guy that got carried off from the stretcher?
Yes, saluting
amongst the limbs as well.
Yeah. So I had the moment on, because at this point you could get crappy merchandise, lots of cheap-looking flags with wooden cane sticks, and I got sliced by someone all the way down my arm with his flag, totally oblivious. I don't think he drew blood, but I had a scar for a good few days. That kind of ruined. Similar to your moment, Joe. I kind of, and then I
think there's a lesson to be learnt here, isn't there?
About what?
Don't go on the pitch.
We shouldn't invade the pitch.
Wow. Let me once,
worth
Mikey. I'm never going to again. I'm not allowed to anymore. But you don't care. I didn't really notice it. And there's this kind of weird moment where there's whispers that Sheepshanks or Burley want to come out, or the players want to do a lap of honour. The players never rematerialise, but a very cool. It's like the end of a night of a wedding disco, where everyone makes a circle. And the kind of married couple stand in the middle and everyone dances around them. But Sheepshanks, do you remember Sheepshanks and Burley doing a little speech? A little bit embarrassing.
No.
Burley says, we're not going there just for a good day, we're going there to win. Or words to that effect. But Sheepshanks holds Burley's arm aloft like he's won a boxing match. It's a little bit, yeah.
I just remember coming out of the ground and just being, there was just cars, horns beeping everywhere.
Yes.
It was like... not something I'd experienced in Ipswich before. It's sort of the sort of thing you expect when you're like a major tournament or in like Portugal or somewhere where everyone's just going around honking car horns and
I remember my dad letting me honk the horn for the first time, and absolute scenes.
3 years of her, guys, all saved up and expended in that one moment there. And I took my mate to the game. I usually go with my old man, but he didn't go. I think he might have been in corporate or something. And my mate had a Latin exam the next day. That's another example of the kind of laughs that we had at the school that Joe and I went to. I didn't know because I didn't do Latin. I'm revealing too much, aren't I?
Calculus est in horto.
Calculus est pater, innit? Yep. Need to cut that bad boy out. That's one for the Latin crew.
And people say I'm the posh one on the podcast.
So we'll deal with the final, and we've got plans for the final, which we'll divulge when the time comes. There's some logistical bits and pieces we need to get there, but there's some post-match incident that I need to tell you about, and we've already mentioned it as well. Bolton are bitter after this. It's about a decade. I don't think Barry Knight ever gets a Bolton game ever again. After the game, Bolton boss Sam Allardyce says the following: Barry Knight could have done untold damage to this football club that will be felt over the next 2 years. You just don't know how long it might take us to get into a position like this again. He should be made accountable, Mikey, for what he's done. Words just can't describe how I feel. I don't think he should ever be allowed to referee a game again. I can't believe what happened to us out there because of an official. I'm not saying all three penalties, but at least one of them was wrong. But he's given 3 decisions, booked 10 of our players and sent 2 of them off, and given nothing against the opposition. Bitter much? He's on strings there, isn't he, Mikey?
Sounds like we were living rent-free in his head.
Well, Barry Knight was for about 10 years, yeah. He said that Barry, and then I think years later he said he had a grudge.
I've got a little anecdote on that I'll come to after we cover the final.
Okay.
Nothing too exciting, but I'll keep my powder dry on that one for now.
All right. Yeah.
But I just felt that Bolton, he'd had them so fired up for this game, but they just totally lost their heads. And I think if anybody, like I had my housemate at uni was a Bolton fan. He was from Framlingham, so I don't know, but his dad was from up that way, so he was from Framlingham but supported Bolton. And so this was in 2003, 2004, and he used to go on about Barry Knight all the time, and this was back before the days of being able to just whip stuff up on YouTube. So after one Christmas break, I had to bring my Blue Heaven DVD back with me to uni, where we all just sat down and watched it, like me and all our friends who were neutrals and the Bolton fan, and none of them could believe the sort of conduct of the Bolton players throughout the game, and that sort of shut him up for a bit after that, really, because it was like, I don't think he'd seen it back. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think one of the big issues was this game wasn't on Sky, so Allardyce almost has a free rein to say what he wants, where the reality is only 2,000 Bolton fans actually saw what happened here and actually saw the whole game, saw the context of the game, saw how bad they were. And they had 10 bookings compared to ours, none, because we were not a dirty side. We didn't really commit fouls. We didn't have any sort of dirty players in our team. We had sort of good footballers. And I say, it's just like saying if the crazy gang of Wimbledon played sort of Pep's Man City, that you'd expect more Wimbledon players to get booked than Man City players, because they just kick them all game, and they just came out and tried to bully us, and they totally lost their heads. And the ref, I don't really think, I thought worst decision of the lot was probably not disallowing their first goal. But I might be a little bit
in
biased with that.
your unbiased opinion.
So one of the things that I'm going to try and get done is exactly that, Joe. There's a few of the guys on Twitter, the kind of pundits or the bloggers for League One and the Championship. One of them's called Benjamin Bloom. I don't know who he is. I'm gonna put the highlights together so they can watch the game and tell me whether they agree with the referee or not. So I think I've always wanted to do that for years. I'm going to try and get that done before maybe on the anniversary of that match. 2 weeks later, just to add, I've got a couple more bits before we sign off and kind of get your memories of how you felt before going to Wembley. But 2 weeks later, Magilton and 5 Bolton players are charged with misconduct. It's Klaus Jensen, Paul Ritchie, Gudny Bergson, Johansson as well. I don't remember him getting involved too much, but Paul Warhurst certainly did. Allardyce is charged for misconduct for those comments that I've just made as well. And 2 years later, when Ipswich played Bolton again in the league, in the Premier League, 2001, 2002 at Portman Road, Allardyce is off on one again. What happened that night was despicable and indescribable. I hope nothing like that ever happens again. That's
he even
long
mentions it in
gone
his
now.
autobiography
He
as
does,
well.
yeah. He was particularly bitter about Ida Gudjonsson and Klaus Jensen being sold as they were the next season, but particularly classless from Allardyce there. But Ipswich really don't care. Magilton, I don't think is reprimanded. He plays the final, so I think presumably it's a fine. But guys, we talked about Barnsley, the opponents at Wembley. Are you feeling optimistic, Mikey, back in 2000?
Yeah, I think so. We'd beaten them, as we mentioned a couple of times, 6-0 at home, 2-0 away. I can remember the weeks leading up to this game, the week leading up to this game. I think my parents were having like an old garage at the end of the back garden, which was my football pitch. They were having it knocked down, and I can remember just playing football in that garden and playing in my head what was going to happen and commentating it. Obviously, I think Scowcroft was still going to play and score the winner because he was my favourite player at the time. And for some reason, I stupidly remember if I hit the ball near where the shed was, there was ladders up. I used to purposely walk under the ladders because I was desperately trying to prove a point to my mum that it wasn't bad luck to walk under ladders.
Oh, wow.
And it was driving her absolutely mad because she thought I was giving Ipswich all of the bad luck.
Proved it.
But
Cheating family or cheating medical science. That's the one.
yeah,
Joe,
but she'd argue that she threw salt over her shoulder or something that gave us good luck. But
exactly right. And yeah, it feels like a big gap to me.
As soon as we won the semi, I just didn't ever think we were going to lose in the final. I don't know whether that was just because I was young, naive, but it just felt like once we beat Bolton and we were going to Wembley that it was written in the stars that we were going to win there because of what we'd been through the previous years, how we probably should have gone up before that, how we were the best team in the league, we'd got over those hurdles, and it just felt like, okay, well now we're going to go and win it there. And I remember going to get my tickets. It was where you had to sort of queue up around the whole ground. I was a season ticket holder, but I remember sort of one of my friends had sort of like, he used to buy tickets for the game, and he could get about 5 tickets for his whole family because I think we need 4 or 5 tickets for each game. So he had enough stubs to get loads of tickets where, again, only me and my sister could go. So we joined the queue around by the old ticket office, snaked all the way round, and up into the old gym was where they were selling the tickets.
Yes.
And it's so long ago. I had a check from a blank check from my dad, which I had to write out once we got to there. And I wrote it out to buy the tickets, and then realised we needed to get the coach tickets as well. So I had to update this blank check that I'd been given and cross it all out and in kids writing to hand it in. But I don't know if they ever cashed it. I presume they did. But we had our tickets and our coach travel sorted, and we're ready to go.
Brilliant stuff. I sent my old man. He went down and got my ticket. So, but more on him in the final because he effectively abandons me at Wembley to go and sit with his mates. So it's not all good, but yeah, it just felt like a huge, massive gap to me to the final, and playing over the events of that that match, and we're still talking about it. 20
I think
years
I had
on.
my Duke of Edinburgh expedition between the semi-final and the final, and I had a flag, a Wembley flag, which I'd bought in town, and then I bumped into Gary Croft and Jermaine Wright in HMV. I got them to sign my flag, and I had it on my tent during my Duke of Edinburgh expedition.
Love that. And I mean, fast forward 20 years, guys, and that kind of these kind of events, these goals, the quality of these players. Just it feels like it's 20 years ago now, doesn't it? I mean, I just rubs salt into the wounds watching these games back where we've got players who can score all types of goals, got a passing, attractive football, and the Premiership is the ambition as opposed to Championship. It's quite stark, isn't it? Sadly, or at the moment the ambition is to just start playing football again, isn't it? That'd be nice. I left you with that was a question, but I think I've just ended on a sour note. How do I swing it back? Let me do a plug. I'll do a plug. We've got Stat and Dave this week in ITS history, guys, are doing a 1980-81 special in a similar kind of vein to the 99-2000 stuff that we've put out. I think it'll be more of a saga like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. It's going to be epic kind of 3-hour long sessions, I think, so keep a lookout for that, particularly if you weren't around. We've gone back in time 20 years on this show, but even further back to 80-81 before any of us were born. So if you want to remind yourselves what it was like to be champions of Europe-ish, the second tier title in Europe, and potentially win the league championship and get to the semi-finals of the FA Cup as well, I think. Then even more memories of how far we've fallen. So keep a lookout for that on our YouTube channel and our Twitter. All this stuff will be on Blue Monday ITFC. Guys, that's all I've got. Any other memories that you want to share? No,
not at the moment.
Well, one from me that I'd forgotten. I remember the next morning at school writing a match report. And I'd actually been banned by my year 4 teacher from writing about football because my diary of my weekend always used to just be I got up, I played football, I went to Bolton Road and watched football, and then on Sunday I watched Football Italia. And she'd banned me from writing about football, which was quite typical of the primary school I went to in Woodbridge. But after that game, I wrote pretty much a full match report, and she actually came to me to tell me it was really good. So
there you go. And
who knows? Would I be sat here now?
Exactly
had
right.
I have not been to that game?
Sliding doors moment for Mikey Penty-Smith. Love that. That's a nice poignant moment to end on. Mikey, where can we find you on Twitter and more of your match reports and articles and pieces of short form content?
I suppose it's not that poignant because I'm not actually a writer, but I leave that to
media.
I leave that to the wordsmiths such as Mullet. So you can find me at Mikey_Smith13.
And Joe, where can we find you?
Just at Joe Fairs.
Just at Joe Fairs. Good stuff. You can find me at Ipswich, and you can find our channel at Blue Monday ITFC and all the fun stuff that we're going to try and have for you over the next few weeks and or months, depending on how much this. I'd forgotten all about the C word, guys, and it's not that C word. It's the other one that's on the news all the time. It's nice. Hopefully, it's been a nice distraction from.
I thought you meant the championship for a moment.
Championship, yeah, we don't have to worry about that anymore. That's the C word that's banned at Pullman Road. Good stuff, guys. Right, I'm going to leave you to it. I'm going to wish you safety and to you and your significant others and then everyone else. And we'll be back with more. Well, we'll be back with the final certainly. And if you want more pub quizzes, give me a shout and keep a lookout for 80-81 stuff. Mikey, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.